On the night of May 20th, 1958, a young man named Ram Thapa walked towards the entrance of an abandoned airport in eastern India. He was trailing behind 3 other men. They were his boss, another employee of his boss, and then a friend of his boss. It was pitch black outside, and so all 4 men had flashlights. But Ram also had something else. He had a huge knife. So the reason they were there is Ram's boss was considering buying this airport. However, there were these rumors floating around that this airport was now haunted ever since being abandoned. Now, Ram totally believed that this place really was haunted. And so going into this, Ram's boss and the 2 other men, they're sort of like, okay, this is intriguing. It's kind of funny that we're going on this ghost hunt. But Ram, he was terrified. He did not like the idea of going into this airport, especially at night. But his boss was basically telling him that he had to go, and so Ram was there. And so Ram's boss reached the gate, he unlocked it, and pushed it open. And as it slowly swung open, it made this horrible creaking sound, and for the first time, all 4 men are getting an unobstructed view into the actual property. And it's totally, again, pitch black, and they're shining their lights inside, and all they see are just these old hangars and different big buildings, but there's no movement. And eventually, they reach the actual runway, and when they got there, instead of shining their lights straight out in front of them, they began shining their lights predominantly off to the side, where there was this huge hangar, and they were all shining their lights in the different windows to see if anybody was inside of there. Ram takes his flashlight, and he aims it straight out in front of them, and he sees maybe a couple hundred meters away is what appears to be this floating orb. And immediately he keeps his light trained on this orb, and he signals to his boss and the others like, hey, look at this. And they all turn, and they're kind of like joking around, and they shine their light, and they also see it. They see this floating orb. It made no sense. They noticed that there was not just this orb of light, but there was something below the orb of light, and this grayish figure. It was like something inside of Ram just clicked, and if he didn't act, they were doomed. And so, without saying anything to his boss or the other 2 men, with knife in hand, Ram took off running towards the figures. A few hours later, Ram and his colleagues were no longer at the airport. Instead, they were at the police station. Ram was in handcuffs. It would turn out those figures that they spotted that Ram went to go confront with his knife were not actually ghosts. Instead, they were 3 women who had come onto the airfield as well, but just to pick flowers. That orb of light that the men had seen was just their lantern. Ram had been so convinced they were ghosts that he had taken off and attacked them with his knife. However, he had been wrong. These were just women, and he killed one of them and severely wounded the other 2. And so ultimately, he was charged with murder and assault. However, when he went on trial, he was actually acquitted of all charges because the jury genuinely believed that Ram actually thought he was attacking ghosts, not people.